Hello, this is Edith Neumeyer, and I'm the author of The Mystery of Adam. Well, it's been a long time. I went on vacation to Germany and Italy and Paris, and it was an interesting trip to visit my family first. And this year is a very special year in Germany. We are celebrating 500 years of Luther, and so lots of information was offered about Luther. And I was very interested about his wife, Catalina. And so I found this video, and it was interesting. It was interesting because I always believed that Luther was kind of discriminating against women still. And he probably was, because I found out in the film, and of course we know that from history, that women 500 years ago were not full human beings. They could not survive unless they were married or a prostitute. And I heard that saying from Luther before, from Martin Luther, and that he said that women should either be prostitutes, married, or prostitutes. But after seeing this film, I kind of realized that that was the thinking of Luther's time. And it really came across as the belief of that time, not necessarily that of Luther. Luther may have quoted, that's what, people believe. And so people believe very strongly that women had to get married in order to survive, in order to have a livelihood. And so women were not only encouraged, but they were almost forced to get married. There were actually three options. And Katharina was forced into the first one, which was monastery. She didn't become a nun. She had to become a nun. Her dad sent her to a monastery when she was 5 years old. And so she grew up in the monastery with the nuns since she was 5. She didn't like it, of course, but her dad did that, her family did that, because they used her as a collateral, in a sense, to get to heaven. They believed that because they gave Katharina to this convent, that now they were saved and they will make it to heaven. So it was kind of sad, but of course Katharina found out about Luther, and she and some other nuns escaped and made it actually to Luther, and that's where she kind of got to know him, and they got married. She was also the one who was kind of the driving force into getting married. Luther didn't seem to be wanting to get married, and because he was focusing too much on his studies, he was very, very focused on his studies. And so Katharina kind of promised him that she would not bother him. And so she did run the household. She was a great businesswoman. She bought land. She bought a farm. She made sure the farm was right appropriately. She managed everything. And they became pretty wealthy because of Katharina. And Luther was actually very proud of her. She also helped Luther write some of his letters and correspondence, and Luther totally praised her for that. So Luther in that film wasn't portrayed as against women as I have thought in the past. He was quite more open and very modern and reformed for his time. So I'm kind of glad I watched that, Um, 500 years ago, it was just interesting. 500 years ago, how women were treated. Um, and then I learned something else. I mean, yes, 100 years ago, women um, became legally equal to men. But I went to this school museum in Germany, and I found out that in 1953, when a woman got married, she could no longer be a teacher. So she had to be unmarried to be a teacher. So that's kind of interesting. 1953, women still could not, um, be independent from their husbands. Their husbands had full authority over them, and most of the time, of course, the husband wanted to keep that authority and wanted to be in charge, and so women had to stay home. So, yeah, it was a pretty interesting trip, historical trip, and kind of motivated me to maybe do more studies about Luther and maybe have a better understanding of him and not be so critical. Because I know, and I have brought this up so many times, that every person throughout history has been influenced by their culture. And what the culture says has so huge of an impact on us. We see everything we read in the Bible, we see through our cultural eyes. And it is very, very hard to change those cultural eyes. And we read everything through that understanding. And the same happens with the people that write the Bible. Okay? People are not blindly receiving this information. They have to process it. They see it, they hear it, they have to process it. And because they process it with their cultural understanding. And so the culture will always influence the writers of the Bible and the readers of the Bible. So much information is lost. We don't know so much information about the letters of Paul and the circumstances, why he wrote them, who he wrote them to. So it's very hard to understand, and that is understandable also with Luther. You could see that. That's what was Luther's concern. They wanted to go to the original texts and see what went wrong. He wanted to make it correct. Why did the Catholic Church interpret things so incorrectly? And he wanted to um, uh, make it right. But again, he was influenced by his culture, and it was a step-by-step process. And once Luther died, the process wasn't finished, and that was kind of sad, because the process of reformation has to continue constantly. It can't stop. We can't decide, well, this is a great church, and a new church, and it flourishes and it's good. Like, for instance, I'm thinking about Willow Creek, and then we'll just stop um, continuing the Reformation. So I will be finishing up today. This was kind of a short one, but I am back and I will be doing more videos. Oh, something else. My um, my nephew, great guy. I really love him. He gave me some tips how to do better videos and how to do a better YouTube channel. So I'm hoping that maybe these tips will come handy, and I will be more successful making these videos.